a scion of many worlds. Delays, there has been something of the sort, but not related to the food supplies, one of the noblewomen states, and she steps back a little as he turns to look at her. She's clearly not aware that he's only being polite by looking at her. He can effectively see her no matter which way he's turned. Electromagnetic sensitive antennae are useful that way. Lady Prism, perhaps you are referring to the recent recall of the Journeywoman's Starseekers, he asks, and she seems to consider before shaking her head. She's one of the more modestly dressed noblewomen, trying not to draw as much attention to herself, as instead of having a pure elemental light line, she has more than a few earth aromenta in her line, a quirk of the species at times. Even in cloning, some genetic lines shift elements. There are more extreme cases where the greatest rarity was to have the same element as your own child. While that is a concern, there's also the fact that more than a few of the farmers' daughters have been wandering off in pursuit of the flying shapes seen in the sky. These spaceships that have arrived near Miru are causing a great deal of disruption and chaos. That's a self-solving problem, I believe. Once the curious and courageous have taken a good hard look at things and come back with knowledge of what's going on, the excitement will taper off somewhat. However, I can increase their patrol range so that they're closer, provided that the issue is that the girls are away from home and not that they're interested in the ships. It's more that there's a large portion of the population that are farmers barely making ends meet and can't afford the distraction. The supplies from the gold lands are a blessing, but there is a reason they're famous for their crop yields. The soil is poor quality for proper plants. Something more to look into. I'll need to have hydroponics or new fertilizers introduced, crop rotations at least, to replenish depleted soils. I'm sorry, but what? Oh, just thinking through solutions to Miru's soil issues. The gold lands are more fertile, but that's only partially due to location. The wildlife they have is also rejuvenating the soil, and most of the species responsible don't live in the more heavily forested and rockier Miru or Greenstone. What? Nocturnal birds that devour crop-infesting insects and small burrowing animals that fertilize the soil. When you say fertilize, what do you mean? Animal droppings or chemicals, he says and holds up his claws to forestall anyone protesting. A crude subject, I know, but nature is often both crude and bloody. It is filthy, but from filth, there is a great deal of nourishment for plants which can then be prepared for more civilized consumption, or fed to beasts, which are then in turn eaten themselves. At the disgusted and downright offended expressions of the noblewomen around him, Emmanuel cannot help himself but bring out his communicator and take a picture. He then turns it around to show the women exactly how they look. That breaks the spell, and they gather their composure. I understand the subject is distasteful, but if leadership were a simple task, any simpleton could do it, and there would be little, if any, use for nobility or individuals of rank. Did you have to veer into the subject of feces and possible indirectly eating it? One of them asks, and he bites back the urge to tell them that indirectly, every living person in the room could be counted as an excretion of their mother. But he refuses. Lifelong nobility doesn't tend to have the same passion for parody, mockery, and derision that scholars or soldiers do. All the more reason to keep his family well and truly away from these women. He has no question as to who would win if a fight would break out. But the main reason Miru wasn't collapsing into anarchy was that he wasn't just ripping people off their ancestral seats or provoking them into pointless doomed rebellion. Pardon, I'm very much in the habit of explaining things and teaching. Before I took up the sword and pistol, I was very much a scholar. Pushing aside how terrifying it is that our nation's conqueror does not consider themselves a warrior, I do have a request, my lord. One of the noblewomen states formally, Yes, Lady Bright? You have assured us that Lady Zavia is unharmed, but I would like proof. Lady Bright states, and hidden under the fur and floof, Emmanuel smiles. Certainly, What form of proof would you like? I can contact her via communicator. Bring her here, or bring you and any others you care to name to her. I want to see where you're keeping her and in what accommodations. Your movements have been swift, erratic, and almost entirely to the benefit of many. But I will see what you have done to her. Lady Bright declares boldly, and Emmanuel crouches down to her level and smiles widely enough that his eyes distort ever so slightly. Many women take a step back. Your loyalty speaks well of you and Zavia both. Although I beg your indulgence, I must know, what has she done to inspire such ferocity within you? Done? She's done nothing. But when the crown passed to her, I swore my oath of loyalty. I keep to it. Lady Bright announces imperiously, and Emmanuel lets out a low chuckle. I like you, little one. Very well, I will bring you to her. Do you wish to be carried? To ride upon an airship? Or be teleported? We will ride, with my guard and those of the home guard still loyal to the rightful Empress of Miru. Well, how can I refuse such a display of loyalty, especially towards my adopted daughter? You don't have to continue the charade of feigned compassion. I know better. I know that it was nothing more than a ploy to seem more benevolent. It was not, but there is little point arguing with someone whose mind is made up about things. How many will be requiring transport? 12, 100? If it's 1,000, it's going to require one of the larger ships or multiple smaller ones, or multiple trips upon a smaller one. You are just agreeing? She asks. When I have nothing to hide, I have nothing to fear. He replies, How many? Or perhaps you would prefer to use the portal doorway just outside the city. It leads directly to Eridus Valley and I can show you the way. Yes, I and the loyal will use the portal. Excellent. Then I will show you the way after we are concluded in our business here. Now, if there are any other concerns or cause for distraction in this gathering, there has been some talk that the Festival of Darkness might be returned due to your favorable attitude towards darkness. Darkness is merely an absence of light. It is the natural state until light intrudes. There is no more cause to fear it than the air we breathe, the earth upon which we tread, the water we drink, the fire that warms us, or the light that guides us. But darkness is the realm of thieves and murderers, the realm of dreams and rest as well. Tell me, my lady, do you sleep in a room filled with burning candles, or do you sleep in a darkened room to allow your mind and soul to rest? If anything, darkness is the element of healing and concealment. Theft and murder are not of darkness, but can hide within it. You do not fear the darkness. You fear what might be within it. How long did it take you to prepare that little speech, my lord? Lady Bright asks in a somewhat bitter tone. None. This is simply things as I understand them, Emmanuel states before rising up. Now then, I ask again, is there any further business? Once again, the Festival of Darkness? I see no reason to deny it or to even move against it in any way. Can you give me one? He asks, and he can sense movement around him. The antennae are just that useful as he watches a silent conversation happen behind and to the left of him. His smirk, like most of his smiles, is hidden behind the floofy fur. He makes a mental note to have their private offices bugged. He's certain it's going to present a wealth of information. The scope of their ambitions may be small, but a small amount of damage can cause immense harm. It only takes a pebble to start an avalanche. Now, is there anything else of concern? He asks once more. The talk of taxation was brought up again, but he had been insistent on his policy of all upward motion, for taxes to be denied, and for concerns for funds to be brought to him with a stiff warning about embezzling. He observed another 4 silent conversations that were occurring outside of his cone of vision, and made a few more mental notes. Notes he copied into his communicator in trill speech right in front of all of them as a warning to those that can understand the language and a test to see how much these people actually care to learn the languages of their neighbors. That it dissolved into a 10-minute lecture on the grammatical nature of trill speech and its formalized patterns is encouraging and discouraging both, which left Lady Bright with time to get the word out to collect the Zavia loyalists. A quick call ahead to quell any possible panic at Eridu's and Emmanuel was somewhat amused and touched to find a small army all wearing the colors of the old guard. They may be misguided and pining for a better yesteryear that wasn't real, but that kind of loyalty was always a beautiful thing. The problem for all of them is that he moved too fast and made waves far too big for them to actually move against him, which made a potentially precarious situation into something more resembling a comedy skit. The forest of spears pointed straight up, and no less than 5 scions of their own noble houses staring at him, afraid but hiding it well. Is this everyone? Yes. They lie to him. He can sense the cannons slowly being wheeled into position behind battlements. There is a very distinct distortion that metal gives to the electromagnetic field of the world, and it lets him know that not only is this cannon suited for 8-pound balls, but has been recently rifled to increase accuracy. They're improving, and he is proud of them for it. The cannoneers as well? He asks, and there's a pause. I'm not upset. That is not assuring. One of the noblewomen states, perhaps not. Someone you regard as an enemy being completely unflappable can do that. But I'm not your enemy, and I will prove it, he says as he checks his communicator again. A good idea is a good idea after all. There's a slight start as the portal activates, and from it comes a massive form that was in many ways the opposite of Emmanuel. Dark and with a single pair of glittering eyes rather than the composite lamps of Emmanuel. Furless compared to his bright fur, blunt, clawless fingers to Emmanuel's brutal claws, and a plainly seen mouth twisted in amusement. But what was bringing the most attention to Horace's arrival was that Zavia was sitting on his shoulder and had her arm resting on the top of his head. "My Empress," one of the noblewomen exclaims, and Horace's reaction is to kneel down so Zavia can slide off with a minimum of fuss. Her clothing is well made but far from ornamental Earthani silk, and it was dyed solid, but striking yellows and dark purples. The stitching is utterly immaculate. The patterns of flowers stitched into the hem of the dress are eye-catching but not distracting. "Have you had fun with your uncle?" Emmanuel asks gently, and gets another one of Zavia's looks, the ones that tell him that he's gone and confused her again. "She was trying to scratch a pattern into the top of my head," Horace notes, and Jasper scoffs before clasping claw to hand with his brother. "Well, it's not like she could shave you bald. Some vandal got there first," Emmanuel jokes. Yeah, yuck it up, Jasper," Horace says with a bright smile. "I still can't believe you chose the name of a petty villain from such a silly movie," Zavia says after turning to regard them, and Emmanuel shrugs. "I needed something to relate to what I remembered at the time, and something to make things seem not so grim. After all, awaking in a body you cannot recognize, with memories that do not match it, lost, naked, and hungry is a rather poor situation for anyone. Learning that you're not yourself, that you're not anyone, and there's only more mystery to come just makes the task all the more daunting." Emmanuel explains himself, and then Horace puts an arm around his shoulders. "But we're undaunted. It only made Moth Boy here tougher," Horace says with a huge smile, and Emmanuel puts his own arm over Horace's shoulders and matches the smile. Not that it can be seen through the floof. "You're damn right it did. Pound it," Emmanuel says, and his curled claw punches against Horace's fist with a heavy striking sound. Zavia has once more crossed her arms and started glaring at him again. Her default when she's unhappy with him, but doesn't have a good reason. The joys of fatherhood to a teenager,